Hello, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours FM, the podcast where you never know quite what we'll be talking about. And already I've managed to sort of derail things. This is episode 95, 5 episodes away from episode 100, where I've got some special things up my sleeves for you. Before I get to introducing my illustrious guest, I would like to thank my illustrious sponsors. First, we have Gravity Flow, which if you haven't heard of Gravity Flow, you're missing out. It goes along with Gravity Forms, and it's a it's a way to automate your email workflow right there from within your WordPress admin dashboard. You can do like easy little drag and drop interfaces and set up almost like a little workflow that you would draw on. What was that software that you used to use? Never mind. I used to use it way back in the day. Anyhow, go check them out, cdeals.me/gravityflow plugin, and just watch the video on their front page. It's very awesome. And then we also have SiteLock, who they are a website security outfit. They do plugins, they do website malware cleanups, all that sort of good stuff. And just this week, I referred one of my clients to them who had 2 sites with cooties, and they fixed both of them up. You can actually get on the phone with them, and they are a delight to work with. If you want to know more about them, check them out at cdeals.me/go-sitelock. Whew! All right, you ready to do this, guys?
Absolutely.
Sweet. So today on the show, I have got one Pippin Williamson and one Corey Miller. And Pippin, let's see, where did I first meet you? Was it Beach Press?
I think it was Beach Press.
Beach Press a couple years ago. For those of you who don't know Pippin, he runs Easy Digital Downloads. He is one of the smartest and also most generous people in the WordPress community I know. He's an awesome guy, and looking forward to chatting with you today, Pippin. And then right to his left, actually his right, my left, your right?
Shows on my left, for me.
I've got Corey Miller, an equally generous and amazing guy in the WordPress community. You might have heard of his company. It's a little bitty outfit called iThemes. And both of these guys have been tremendously vocal, especially recently, on the topic of mental health and the role that it plays in your business. As a matter of fact, Corey just keynoted at the Pressnomics conference on that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you'd like to join in the conversation, you can ask questions on Twitter using the hashtag OfficeFM. Or if you're watching via the Google Q&A app, you're not going to be watching in the Google Q&A app because that's ridiculous. But if you're watching on Google, you can use the Google Q&A app to get rolling. And with that, let me let you guys do a little introduction of yourself, since I only gave like the brief little snippet. But Pippin, let's start with you. Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. I'm a plugin developer. I run a company called Sandhills Development, which is also the owning company of Easy Digital Downloads, Affiliate WP, and a few other products. I have a small team that works with me, and while I call myself a developer, mostly my day-to-day job now is taking care of the team.
Oh, sorry. Hey, this is.
I was gonna start you off, but then I couldn't get my finger off the mute button. So thanks for hop in there.
Yeah, my name is Corey Miller, and I'm the Chief Entertainment Officer at iThemes. We build and design iPhone wallpapers. Do you remember those things? We sell those for the iPhone. So we got a sale running today for 99 cents a wallpaper. It's basically with Carrie and Pippin's face on it. But so we started iThemes back in 2008. We do WordPress plugins primarily to date, themes, training, and let's see, what else? I started doing WordPress stuff about 10 years ago, trying to learn web design, and started doing free themes, and everything snowballed until today. And I'm happy to do this job. It's the best job I've ever had. And I want to thank Carrie for, my first appearance on Office Hours to talk about depression.
Well, Thanks for leading us all into a state of depression.
You don't have an insert joke like thing you can push on your control panel?
Or, yeah, I don't know, some sort of a little
Doesn't work.
soundboard. So, you know, we joked just now, joking about depression, but depression, you've been very open about sharing your depression and how that has, I don't know if stunted is the right word, but held you back in business and from even enjoying what you were doing. Would you mind just taking us through? You shared something at Pressnomics, and for the people that weren't able to be there, could you kind of explain the iceberg thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was about 5 years ago. I walked into a counselor's office, and he had me go through a battery of questions. And at the end, he goes, "Yeah, I would say you've got low-grade depression." And I had just was going through a divorce and ended up in that counseling room and to kind of work through some issues. And so that's what you're talking about when you say depression. That was the first and only time, as far as I know. Well, that's the first time, only time I've been diagnosed with by a professional. But I know, looking back on my life, there's been highs and lows throughout it for sure. Where, just dealing with just life. My story's not any worse than anybody else's, but just kind of dealing with the highs and lows of being a human being. And then you add the layer on top of that, which is entrepreneurship. And so that's kind of some of the background I shared at Pressnomics. And previous to that, WordCamp Denver, just basically for the first time in 5 years, actually shared publicly. One, I went through a divorce as part of the business that I had been, labeled or diagnosed, whatever you want to call it, by a professional as having depression or experiencing depression. And so when I was thinking about part two of that, sharing my mental health story, and I guess this is now like part three or something, 2A or 2B, I just thought about all the things that we deal with as entrepreneurs that we don't share. We're so good at sharing the above the surface stuff, and so this was the thing that I shared at Pressnomics, the iceberg. And so basically, above the, real simple, right? Above the iceberg, we're really good at saying, okay, we just hit $1 million net revenue. We got 25 people. We did this awesome new feature. We're so good at sharing the press release version of our life at there, and there's probably some brag in there too. We're kind of good at that. We want to share all the good stuff. But what I've experienced the last 8 years of being an entrepreneur is there's so much underneath the surface that we don't ever talk about. And, insecurity, doubt, fear, those are things I deal with on a daily basis. Of course, worry and anxiety in there. And the scary part is the thing at the very bottom of the iceberg, I think, which is depression. And so having experienced that somewhat in my life, and then seeing some statistics that were pretty alarming to me, I got to think that there's more people out there really hurting, but doing it silently. No one knows about it. And so part of me sharing the story isn't to say, oh, feel sorry for me. Hey, my stuff that happened in the past, I've dealt with and gone on. I'm sharing the story now because I think it will resonate with a lot of other people, and it has. Every time I shared the story publicly, I get private messages from people just saying, hey, I made an appointment today. Thanks so much. And so part of my life cause I discovered through this was to say that for the rest of my life, I'm going to be bold about sharing the story of mental health and the importance of it in your life, and helping other people like erase the stigma and to seek help, seek a group of people in their life, a support team that can help you deal with this up and down. When I came to conclusion about the iceberg is like, we always say that like entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. But if you think about it, okay, so you go up above the iceberg, oh, we just did this, down, oh shit, my life sucks. That's like entrepreneurship, above and below, and so that's a little bit of I feel like now part of my life purpose is to share my story in order to help other people work on that stuff below the iceberg. Ironically, after I left Pressnomics, I booked a counseling session, which I do, by the way, 4 times a year. I put on my calendar a reminder to go do that, make an appointment with my guy, Kyle, my counselor. And it was just just some things that popped up in life under the iceberg kind of things that, like, I got to deal with this kind of stuff. So that's kind of a summary of my story and what I'm trying to do with it now.
I love that. I think it takes a lot of bravery to say those things out loud or to admit we're not perfect. I've actually been diagnosed with depression myself, and it's not something that, I don't put it in my Twitter bio or anything, but it's certainly part of my makeup, and it's part of who I am. But I love the under the iceberg, or the iceberg analogy. At Pressnomics, I had several conversations where I said, we kind of lean in. This is an under the surface conversation, on the bottom side of the iceberg conversation. So thanks for sharing that. Pippin, you recently wrote a post over on pippinsplugins.com, and it's not the first post in this vein you've written, but about that it's okay to be a little selfish. Will you share kind of the backstory on that?
Absolutely. I think I found through the last 7 or so years, which has been about when I started my development career and then slowly started building up a team of people around me, I found that I think it's very easy to get into that mindset where your only goal is to take care of your users, take care of your customers, build a product, and kick ass is really kind of the mindset that you get into, and you tend to forget about yourself, whether it is physically or mentally. And so we're in this mindset where we're constantly, day to day, we're trying to build whatever product or service we're building. We're trying to take care of the customers that we have, and we kind of let our own needs go to the wayside, and eventually that all kind of piles up, and you realize that you can't keep doing that. And so my premise, and it was kind of a realization that I had for myself not too terribly long ago, was that if you want to have a long, not just a long-term relationship with, say, your customers or your users or your product, but if you want to keep doing what you do long-term, you have to remember that you have to take care of yourself. And so I kind of put out this premise of being a little bit selfish, and not in the, okay, hoard your money, take all your cash, buy really nice things for yourself, but more of think about yourself. Think of, and yourself not just being you, but also being your team, the people around you, and your family. So I realized for myself that I needed to be a lot better at shutting off and saying, you know what, it's okay that I don't work this evening. It's okay that I go and do something that I want to do, whether it is going for a bike ride, spending time with my family, brewing some beer, or whatever it is. It's okay to not work 18 hours a day. I think there's a fear within people that kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit and that drive that you have to keep working, you have to keep working, you have to keep working, because if you quit, you're a failure, which is kind of suicidal eventually, because if you do keep just pushing and pushing and pushing, eventually it's going to break you down, and either drastically, suddenly, or over time. So yeah, the real premise is just that if you want to continue to succeed, continue to be healthy, not just in your personal life or in your business, but with everything, you have to think of yourself. You have to take care of your team, and you and your team come first. We a lot of times especially in the product business and in the service industry, we tend to think that the people that we're building these for, our customer base, they're the ones that always come first. And I've realized that that's really not accurate. That's not right. While absolutely they are a top priority, because they are one of the reasons that allow us to run the businesses that we do, you can't serve them, you can't make them happy customers if your team or yourself are suffering, whether it is with overwork or depression or anything. You can't take care of them if you don't take care of yourself first.
Once again, the mute button. I think that is the voice of wisdom, that you have to take care of others, or excuse me, take care of yourself. before you're fit to take care of others. I remember a very low point in my life about a dozen years or so ago, and I was just sort of just beyond frazzled. And this is before I had discovered any sort of medication to help out with depression, and it was only mild depression, but still just had a lot of different things going on in my life that contributed to being in a not a good place. And I remember sitting on my front porch, can remember it like it's yesterday, and my friend Eva was sitting in a lawn chair next to me, and she put her hand on my shoulder and said that you are not helping anyone if you're not healthy yourself. Basically, you have nothing to offer if you're not healthy. And I've thought about that ever since, and using that word, Pippin, that you use, selfish, and it feels weird, like that's not something you should do.
It feels selfish, is what you're saying?
It actually does feel selfish. Yeah, but that it's, you've got to. And I think that with the part where I wasn't really being as helpful as I thought I was to other people, that was the part that was really motivating for me to say, okay, I need to take a little bit of step back and then invest a little bit in my own.
There were 2 points in time when I realized it. Once I realized it for myself on a personal level, and then once I realized it for our team. I had, about a year and a half ago, I had realized that I had gotten into the mode of all I do every day is solve other people's problems. And I realized one day that I didn't want to be solving people's problems anymore, because that was all I did, and I was never solving any of my own. And so I realized, hey, I have to do things that I want to do. I have to take care of myself a little bit better. And if that means ignoring someone else's problem for a little bit so that I can address my own and then better address theirs tomorrow, that's okay. And then the other one was we realized at one point that we had allowed some things within our ecosystem, within our products, to kind of run the team instead of us running ourselves. And it was pushing us in directions that we didn't like anymore, and we didn't like it as a team. And so we had to think about ourselves a little bit more and realize, okay, wait, is this what we want to do, or are we going to we realized that where we were going was not what we had signed up to do. And so if that was what was going to continue, we were not going to continue. We were going to quit and do something else. And so we had to realize that and move some things around in order to actually do what we had signed up to do.
What was the moment that you realized that you were kind of tracking down a wrong path, or was there a specific aha, or just?
Well, it had been kind of eating at me for a long time. Sometimes you get that feeling inside that this is not quite right, but you're in the mode of, let me take care of the customers, so we're just gonna ignore it. And so the day it was absolutely one point in time. I was on vacation in New Zealand, and a couple of team members called me up and said, hey, we need to have a quick meeting. And it basically came down to, if we don't make changes, if we don't realign our focus and what we're doing, we're going to quit. And that was a feeling felt team-wide. Like, it wasn't just two individuals, it was everybody. I had felt that way, they felt that way, and so we just decided right then and there that we were going to make some changes.
Good deal. If you're joining us a little bit late into the show, welcome aboard. I'm chatting with Corey Miller of iThemes and Pippin Williamson of Easy Digital Downloads, and we're talking about the subject of mental health and taking care of yourself and how that impacts your business. Going back to some of our earlier conversation, Tara says, I keep working because I love it, but also there's always more to do and tweak. My default thing to do is work. And I think, that's, Pippin, like you said, for the entrepreneurial folk, that is true. There's always going to be one more thing to be done, but got to draw the line, step away from the computer.
I think there's this I've been rehearsing this in my mind for a long time as, like, when I said selfish, I'm joking, because I think the three of us, the stories we share is that we probably default to being more people pleasers. I'll talk for myself and not label that with you guys, but people pleasers, perfectionists, and wanting to give so much to other people. And as I've been thinking about this, because same thing, I realized about 5 years ago, just like Pippin and you said, Carrie, is that my happiness and health has to come first. If I am a jerk, my little toddler is not going to be benefited by the fact that I'm just really unhealthy. But there's this kind of concept that came to mind is that love others up until the point that you damage yourself. Love yourself up until the point you're damaging others. You know what I mean? So, but it's this balance. And when, Pippin said he was selfish earlier, no one in the community knows, everybody knows Pippin is the least selfish person. However, on one side, you got severe narcissism, and on the other side is standing Mother Teresa, And I think there's this balance of, like, being able to be kind of in the middle and going, I love myself enough not to let anyone ever cross boundaries that they did once before. That's my part. And to make sure that in that self-love thing, we're not crossing other people's boundaries and really damaging other people. Because you've seen the narcissist side. That's where it's like, I want everybody as my servant to my own happiness, and that's not what any of us are saying here. But there's this real true balance of making sure we're healthy, and so that we can emanate the love, the care, the talents, the treasure that we have. But there's also a set boundary. And my counselor told me something, we were talking about boundaries, and he said, boundaries are for protection. Boundaries are good. And he talked about this study where these kids had this playground, and it was surrounded by a fence, but all four sides of the playground had a busy street. And they did the study, and they thought, okay, let's take the fence away. And he said, you know what the kids did? And I said, well, there's probably, I was thinking to myself, there's a couple kids that just ran straight out in the road, one of which would probably be mine. However, but he said what they found was they all bundled together. They got tight. They realized they had lost their boundary to protection. Boundary is a good thing, and every time I have set a healthy boundary in my life, I have gotten more and more happy. I mean, my happiness increases exponentially every time I set healthy boundaries. Now, people don't want, when you're setting a boundary with somebody else, they don't like that. But that's a resetting to go, hold up. Does your health and happiness come at the sacrifice of mine? Now we've got a bad relationship that we need to kind of talk through. So I ranted and went on boundaries, but anyway, I just wanted to point out that I feel like there's this self-love enough where you're not trying to hurt, or you aren't indirectly hurting people, but also loving people enough where they're not hurting you either. And I've got tire marks all over myself where I finally said, enough is enough. No one will ever run over me. No one will ever cross the boundaries of my life. And those conversations suck at first, but I tell you what, man, the sun shines bright when you know that there is a protection around you.
There's a great book. I think I might have talked about it on the show before, but it's called Boundaries by Henry Cloud, and I read that in my 20s, actually around the time that the stuff I mentioned earlier was going on, and it was one of the most helpful things to me to get permission, so to speak, that it's okay to set boundaries and say no. And of course, saying no can come in handy in lots of situations with clients and customers included. Devinder says family distractions can be very positive in breaking work monotony. So make babies and adopt lovely dogs. All right. Well, you can go do all those things, but please wait till after the broadcast is over, especially for my guests on the show. So Patty asks, so was your business ever impacted as a result of taking that time to take care of yourself? I'll let either one of you hop on that one.
I'd give a resounding yes, but in a very positive way. So I think there's been a lot of studies and work that have been done looking at how we perform as human beings in terms of like our productivity, how well we can focus, what we can do when not only are we mentally healthy, but let's say physically healthy as well. So just for an example, there's a lot of research that's been done and discovered that sleeping 8 hours a night is extremely important to your productivity and what you're able to do the next day. And so one of the maybe smaller things that I worked on that I think had a profound effect on my day-to-day work was sleeping enough. All through college, I was in the phase that screw sleep. Sleep is a complete waste of time, and so I would sleep 2-3 hours a night. I would drink ridiculous amounts of caffeine because I wanted to keep pushing. I wanted to keep working harder and harder and harder. But I discovered that when I stepped back, started taking care of my body, taking care of my mind, and actually getting enough sleep, getting enough physical activity, etc., that the 8 or so hours a day that I do put in instead of the 18 hours a day are actually far more productive, and I get a lot more done. And not only that, but I also feel better. And so stepping back and realizing that I need to take care of myself actually allowed me to get a lot more done, even if there was a lot less time being put in.
So maybe a little bit of a dip up front, but a very worthwhile investment.
I don't even know if there was a dip, honestly. I think the dip that would have happened, at least for me, was in that period of trying to figure out what the heck am I doing? Like, how do I take care of myself? How do I fix this problem? But as soon as you figure it out, then it's all upward.
Corey, did you have anything to add to that?
It's uncanny, but my 3-year-old knows my emotions. There's times where he'll come up and I'm like, wow, if a 3-year-old can get that, then yes. Businesses are of course all people, and when I am low, I realize that reverberate, ripples down through the entire team and my entire life, so people can know, like, hey man, what's going on? At one point 5 years ago, we were still doing a live show on Ustream, and we were doing the show. We were not talking about anything personal. And afterwards, Grant Griffiths of Headway Themes, a dear friend of mine, texts me and he goes, "Man, are you doing okay?" And I just I was like, "Oh my God, Grant." I said, "Here's what I'm going through." And so, he's hundreds of miles away and can sense that something's going on in my life. So absolutely, it affected us. When I was low, it affected us negatively because people adopt that. The hang, especially if you're the leader. I mean, and so they can sense that, and I think it ripples down. And through my life too, when I made that appointment, about 2 weeks or right after Pressonomics, it was basically my wife saying, "Call now, call. You need to go talk." And that was awesome. It was just people being sensitive to what I'm going through and stuff like that. So yeah, the short answer is yes for us.
We like long answers too. It's a long form podcast. Rebecca asks, she says, after running a WordPress business for many years, I'm not depressed, but I am definitely burned out. I'm sure you've both encountered it as well. How do you push through and keep your momentum going? Who wants to tackle that one first?
I think one thing that I found helps, and I know this is definitely not an answer for everybody, but for me personally, is I hit a lot of different projects. And in some ways that actually probably contributes to me getting burnt out faster because there's always 1,000 to-dos on every project. But it also helps me a lot because I can focus for a week on one project, and then I can switch gears and focus for a week on a different one. And then when I come back to the previous one, it's a new fresh project again, as opposed to one project that I work on for 3 years. And I think that has helped a lot. I mean, it's contributed negatively as well because of instead of having 100 things to do, I have 300 things to do. But when it comes to the burnout, I find that I'm less susceptible to it by doing that. And the other way is taking breaks a lot more frequently. And not just like taking a day off, but taking a 20-minute break, taking a 10-minute break. Those, I think, make a huge difference. Something that I found is I got a dog about 3 years ago, and I walk my dog 3 times a day or twice a day, and that is my 10 to 15-minute break, and I come back and I'm refreshed. And so whether it's walking a dog, going for a bike ride, simply sitting outside and getting some sunshine, walking around wherever you are in the world. I think that can be immensely helpful.
So I would say first and foremost is that with depression, I'm not a professional counselor, but I know one thing is that I would never, ever, ever try to tempt fate with depression. That's just not that. Anytime I've talked with someone, I just beg them and plead them. I'm not a professional. I can talk to you. I can be a shoulder, to cry on, or an ear to listen. However, don't ever, ever, ever tempt that. Don't. It's way too dangerous. There's too many stories out there where we isolated ourselves and we got to the point where we thought really bad things and we did bad things. And please don't ever do that. So, first, I hear a lot of freelancers in particular. That's kind of our crowd that we sell to at iThemes, and they do this. They're like, hey, I haven't taken a vacation in 2 years, and I'm just like, oh man, even at probably the hardest, I still took some time off. But the question becomes, how do you rejuvenate? How do you recharge? Pippin with his dog, perfect example. It's knowing yourself. Now that's a day-to-day thing that he takes a walk. Now for me, I read, I go think about something else, right? And I have other things like, playing with my children, just going out to the zoo with them or something like that. But then I know that there's periodic times throughout the year, and every person's different, that I can just plug into the recharge button and just go, oh man. Now for me, that's sitting on the deck of our cabin in New Mexico and feeling the beautiful air, looking up at the blue sky, and having zero noise, like except for birds chirping or something, or my kids crying in the background. But I can just feel my heart and everything raise up, and I feel so. My heart goes out to the people that have not had a vacation in so long. To say, take a weekend trip or something, because you're gonna, frustration leads to anger, anger to bitterness, and then you just keep going down and down and down, and then you're gonna hit burnout. And past that, you're gonna say, okay, I'm checked out, I'm done. I'm gonna go do something where my mind doesn't have to think, and I want to sit somewhere quiet, somewhere that I can just do a little job for an hourly rate, and that's not good. That's not where you want to go. And so taking those periodic times is just something. It's like profit in your business. You have to have it, right? That you have to say, this is on my agenda. Book a flight. Do something where you cannot renege on that. Like, it's going to cost you hundreds of dollars to do that. And I think, deadlines and plane tickets are good examples of that. Like, hey, I promised, I'm sorry, And I think, if people aren't responsive to that, that's a big red flag to go, well, I'm going to replace that client as soon as I possibly can, because they don't get it. I want alignment in my life of people that get, who I am, the boundaries, the love, the mutual love and affection and care and stuff like that. And I think that goes for client stuff. So,
I'm glad you.
Places.
What's that?
Find those. I mean, Pippin found his in the daily thing of like having a dog, going out. He doesn't probably think too much. He's just thinking about being in the, outside and with his dog and stuff. And that's what he found to be awesome. You got to find that. You got to know yourself. He knew himself. I know myself enough where I know, okay, I'm getting burned out. I got to go just take a drive or something. Get away from it. And kind of recharge.
Go find your soul food.
And we're not talking about fried chicken and waffles,
Mm-mm.
even though that is delightful soul food. Have either one of you ever had to extract yourself from a toxic relationship in business? Maybe a client or coworker, or you might not be able to say.
I've had a couple back when I was doing freelance work, I did freelance work for about 4.5 years or so before I got into products. I had a few clients then that ended poorly, and we had to part ways. And since then, we also, even in the product world, we still have those customers that sometimes you have to part ways with because they're toxic. And it doesn't matter whether they're a $5 customer or a $5,000 customer. You get those customers, you have to sever ties, and I think it's stupidly difficult to do sometimes, at least the first time. Like inside, that you have to do it, but then the other part of your head that's the people pleaser says, nope, I'm going to do whatever I can to make you happy. I'm going to sacrifice my time. I'm going to sacrifice my resources and even perhaps my team to make you happy. And the day that you realize that that is absolutely the exact opposite of what you should do is a good day. Sever those ties and get rid of them. I mean, try and do it however professionally and elegantly as you can, but at the end of the day, that relationship has to end.
I'll say generically yes, to try to preserve some names and people and things like that. But it's all about people. But the people that either give me ongoing, consistent heartburn or keep me up at night have just self-selected out of my life and business. And so, yeah, I've got plenty of those examples to save some of those specific stories. But it's freeing. There was one, and this wasn't necessarily toxic, but it was having to fire somebody. I realized that I was in a meeting, and I knew I needed to go back and let someone go. And that's always that sucks. Breakups in business are a part of life, whether it's your customer, clients, or your team, partners even. Breakups are a part of business. But when I came back and told that person, hey, I'm gonna have to let you go, and went through that thing. It was the freedom to release that person to find the right fit. Now that person wasn't necessarily toxic, but to find the right fit, because maybe you and I can't connect, or you can't work in this scenario, and we've had to let go people in the past, of course. I always try to think of it though as freeing that person up to go do or be with somebody they should really be with.
When I was managing at Starbucks and it would have to let somebody go, we would say that we were giving them the opportunity to succeed elsewhere.
I think it's a good way to put it.
Promotion to customer. Let's see. So we've got another good question here from Rebecca. She asked, are there any tips you can recommend to implement in your daily life? And we kind of talked a little bit about things like getting out from behind the desk or going for a walk. But for people, if what you guys and we're sharing today, if it resonates with them, or maybe they struggle with depression or some of these relationships that are just weighing down, not everybody is going to run out and go medicate themselves or find a counselor. And not that that's not right for everyone, but what are some things that you do just sort of daily to maintain the sanity?
One for me is I have work hours. I work from 9 to 5, or sometimes 8 to 6, but it's basically that range. That is the time of day that I'm working, and outside of that I'm not. And I think that helps in a lot of ways. Number one, it sets expectations for people that are working with you or beside you or waiting on you to do things. If you set that expectation of when you're there, they know that outside of those hours, they shouldn't expect anything from you, because guess what? You're not at work. You have office hours. You're closed. Two, it's I think a lot easier, especially if you work from home, to set that mental disconnect that says, okay, now I'm working. Now I'm not. Now I'm playing or off. Now is my off time. I'm going home. Even if going home means you walk out of your office, you go downstairs, and you go to your kitchen. But having those set hours, I think, are hugely important. The other one for me is making my morning coffee every morning. I take 15 minutes to make my coffee through a pour-over system, and it's kind of my morning ritual that gets me into the right mental state to get back to work. And I don't do anything during that. I just enjoy the process, and it's okay to take 15 minutes to do it. So whatever that ritual is for everybody else, but maybe have one.
Good tips. Corey, how about you?
So building a support team around you, and here are my 5, and mileage may vary, but here are my 5. First is my significant other, my first lady, as I call her, my wife. She's my first partner in business. She's the one that knows me best. It's uncanny. She probably knows me better than myself so many times, and it infuriates me because I'm like, oh man, you're pointing out the obvious and this sucks because I didn't know that. Number two would be a sidekick in business. I think so many times, specifically freelancers, are on their own, isolated in a room in their home by themselves, and it's quiet, and they don't have a people element. And so number two, I'd say a sidekick, someone that you can just like, hey, got this idea, and get some kind of reverb back of like, yeah, this is good, this back. I've had a couple sidekicks. My current sidekick is Matt, my COO. But just a sidekick in the business to say, I'm not alone, and I don't want to make these decisions in a vacuum. And the third would be a mentor. So I've got a mentor that's been there, done that, way far ahead of me, in my definition of success, by the way. And he's so good. I've met with him just once, probably in the last month, and just said, hey, tell me the story about this in your life. And he's who I'm trying to strive to be. The fourth is a counselor. I mean, a licensed professional counselor, someone that is specifically trained, has residential, experience under a supervised thing, and then now as a practitioner that fits with you. Not every counselor is going to fit with you. I've sent a lot of people to different people, and they're like, hey, I didn't like them. You don't need to like them. Don't go back and pay them anymore. Go find somebody else. And the fifth was a group of people that are like-minded that you can walk with. So I have a couple of those pockets of people that I can just, man, I got some hard issue, whether it's, hey, I'm going to be a first-time dad. What's it like being a father and an entrepreneur? And those experiences were incredibly helpful for me. That support team is what I probably had remnants of it in 2010. But after that experience, I knew I couldn't just trust myself and rely on myself to know what was going on in my own life, in my own heart, and also to be able to kind of like say, hey, somebody that loves and cares about you, and that's why I built that team, and those are the key people around me that I hold really tight, and they're just so good. I mean, like I just shared the example of Lindsay going, hey honey, call, and it was done in love and affection, of course, but so that support team is absolutely vital.
Well, that actually pairs nicely with Jackie's question. She says, how do you get past the fear of sharing that things are not going so well in business with your peers? And it sounds like basically you find a safe environment to do that. Not everybody has to know all of your dirty laundry or your business, but finding people that you can get that feedback from is critical. And I'm impressed that you've put such a structured group around you.
It's taken me 5 years to get here, but it's all about trust, and you develop that over time. So let's say you got two people that you think about, hey, what if maybe it starts with one, but you start from one level of trust that's just like, hey, I don't mind sharing this part of that underneath the iceberg. And as they share theirs, okay, we both put our ante on the table, and now I can go here. And it's all, you don't step into that lightly. I'm not saying that at all. My group that I talked about, the business group in Oklahoma City here, it's taken us 5 years. And the first year, we didn't share, we shared just a little bit under the surface, and then we got deeper and deeper and deeper. But the trust component can't be underscored. This is also why I always say about a counselor, because when I talk to my counselor, I get to share the bile of life in my heart. I get to share that truly, deep anger and frustration, and then I don't get to, in the relationship conflicts I might have in my life, and I don't have to have Thanksgiving dinner with that person, and that's why I love. I go, hey, it's like trash day. Hey, Kyle, here you go. See you later. But I'm not going to see them in a family or friend context again, and there's extreme confidence there where I can go way, way, way farther there because I've got a trust, but also there's a professional, he takes an oath, he abides by an oath.
Legally bound.
There you
go. Pippin, anything to add to that in terms of sharing with your peers?
I would definitely echo a lot of the same sentiments. I've never been nearly as structured as Corey is. I think Corey is a very, very structured person. I'm a little bit more sporadic. But when I step back and think about it, there's a few select people that I will share anything with, whether it's personal or business. And the days that we get together, whether it's in person or virtually, and offload some of those, even whether it doesn't matter whether it's because I don't know what to do with my toddler, or I don't know what to do in this particular business scenario. Those days always end up better afterwards. And I think the first couple of times of us getting together and maybe sharing those, it was really, really hard. Trying to figure out how to actually let go. I've always been a pretty private person in terms of I don't usually open up and talk about some of the deeper things. But if you can get those on the table, it has a pretty significantly noticeable impact, for sure, in a positive way.
You both talk about trust, and last week I had Tom McFarland on talking about relationships in business, and earlier this season I had Topher, I'm thinking Topher One Kenobi, and I just blanked, Topher DeRoja, on talking about communication skills. And so part of this does go back to, in order to get those, to build that team of trust around you, you have to invest in creating those relationships and good relationships. Good stuff. We've got about, for those of you who are listening live, we've got about 10 more minutes together. So if you want to get a question in to Corey or Pippin, now is the time to do it. You can do that on Google using the Google Q&A app if you're watching over there, or on Twitter using the hashtag OfficeFM. We've got a question from Devender. He says, do you guys proactively conduct activities to keep employees in a good mental state?
Yeah, we so when I started my own personal journey and realized how beneficial it was to just to talk on a regular basis with a mental health counselor. By the way, you have at certain age points in your life, male or female, you have certain physical checkups that you go to see a physician for because of certain things, colon cancer, whatever it is, breast cancer, right? And that we don't have that for mental wellness is strikingly is terrible. That we don't have these mental check-ins for all the stuff that's going on in our brain. I would present to you that it's physical health is awesome. You have to have that, right? But it starts with mental health. If you're a marathon runner and so fit and can run 26 miles, whatever that is, but you're dying inside, then your physical health is going to deteriorate. So now, saying that sidebar, I forgot the question. For our people.
For your team.
So anyway, when I started that thing, so I reached out to my counselor and said, hey, because he's part of a clinic, and I said, is there anybody that can come? So we started sharing, pulling resources over, like having a person come talk to us about what it's like to go through that process. And then, very honestly, it's me consistently sharing my own story with our team. Now, again, trust and what layer of that iceberg you share is dependent on the relationship, right? Some things might scare some people unnecessarily, but every chance that I've got to share the story, a couple of our team members asked the Personomics talk would be recorded, and I said no, because they wanted to hear what I had to say. And so doing things like this, I think, just helps remind people. Now, that's not for everyone. I wouldn't say this for everyone, but just being open about it. I've been surprised in my entire life, as I'm open, people are open, and then I go, well, here's what worked for me. Take that for what it's worth, but that kind of stuff.
I think the number one thing for us has been making sure that we're trying to create an environment where we know that any one of us can reach out to the others on the team and say, hey, I need help, and to know that that's okay, and that, hey, if you're having a bad day, don't come to work. It's okay. Just this is a thing that we need to work through, and we're in an environment of trust and openness where we want to take care of each other, and that's both physically and mentally. And so if we're not actively promoting that that's part of our company culture, then I don't think we're doing our part. And so I think it starts with that. I don't think you need to necessarily have set activities or get-togethers that you do on a scheduled basis, especially because not everybody works on a schedule. But knowing that you're in an environment where you can just reach out, whether it's to your coworker, your boss, your colleague, or whatever, just say, hey, either I need help or what do you think of this? I'm struggling. I think that is hugely helpful. And promoting that idea through and through.
If leadership had a one-word definition, it would be care. That's exactly what Pippin's just said. If leadership had a one-word definition, it would be care. And that's a value that if you hold internally, just like Pippin said, that's a core value. Whether they have it on a wall, talk about it, openly on their chat rooms and stuff, they know Pippin leads the way and he cares.
I love you guys. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there. Before we carry on, we got a couple more questions here, but I did very much want to thank my sponsors for this episode. It is the generosity of sponsors that enable me to help cover the cost of the podcast and just keep bringing out what hopefully I think is great interviews every week and talking about important topics like this. So that said, thank you, Gravity Flow, for being a part of this episode. Steve, we wish you well over in, I believe you're in the UK, or I could be wrong about that, somewhere across the other side of the pond. But Gravity Flow is a nice little add-on to the Gravity Forms plugin that can help you automate some workflows. Check them out at cdeals.me/gravityflow-plugin. And then we've got SiteLock, a website security plugin, and some additional tools that help you keep your site secure and can help bail you out should you get your site in a malware mess. You can learn more about them at cdeals.me/go-sitelock. And they're also offering 30% off for officehours.fm listeners. Cool stuff. So
Carrie, I cheated. I looked at Twitter. And Jackie, yeah, see, I'm still in your job.
Jump the gun. Go ahead, jump it.
Jackie said, any tips for creating a habit of thinking positively versus being skeptical about things? Can I tee off on that?
Tee off. Are you going to tee off from the ladies' tees or the
I have to.
Okay.
The putt-putt range. That's where I go. So, through my experience, I realized, my self-talk sucks. The stuff that I say in my brain to myself sucks so bad. And I realized, here's the test. Would I ever say that to another human being, the people I love most? And I realized, you're being the worst person ever. And I think we are. We're our worst enemy. That I had to switch that up. There's a great book it's like a reference book. I keep it up in a tab on my Kindle, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. And I go back to that every time I start doubting myself and this internal little monologue thing happens, and I'm like, stop, go back. I'm worthy. I'm worthy of this life. I'm worthy of the air I breathe. I have value to the world. And that has been so good. Every time I try to catch myself in these not negative, self-destructive, I can't imagine that. I try to be the most encouraging, inspiring person to other people, and I'm not that to myself, and so it's just trying to see those flags of you're doing it again. There's another book called Feeling Good, and he talks about the cognitive biases we have, sales are down today. The world is ending. U.S. currency is disrupted. Everything's going to hell, and that's one of those cognitive biases. I think there's 6 or 7 or maybe 12 or something. And I realized I started going through that list and go, oh my gosh, I got to clean up my self-talk. I got to figure this. When I start doing these things, I got to catch myself saying, okay, it's 10 o'clock and we haven't made $100,000 today. I think we're going to be okay. I think today the world is not falling yet, so we're going to be okay, Corey. And I think it's that self thing that you just have to catch yourselves on those flags. And talk better, but that book is foundational.
You've got a quick advertisement for your book list. You are constantly consuming books and have a great running list on your website of your favorites. What's the URL to that?
It's CoreyMiller.com, and I think it's right in the nav, but at CoreyMiller.com without an E on the Corey. and it'll say my reading list, and it's got, I don't know, 75 books on there probably now, and I need to make sure that book is on there.
Okay, so you have a task right after this podcast is over. Tara comments, she says, in the 24/7 world of websites, a freelancer being offline after 5 p.m. seems impossible. There's always emergencies, a client site going down, things like that. I would say that goes back to setting some boundaries around. Pippin, like you said, you have office hours; those are communicated. I believe they're communicated on your support emails that go out.
Used to be, at least. I'm not sure if they're still there, but
yeah, it is tough. But at some point, you do have to draw a line around it, because otherwise.
Another way you can do it, especially if you're a freelancer and you're building sites for clients, I mean, there is a certain level of care that you have to take for them. If you are building their site and you are taking on the responsibility of ensuring that that website stays up and that it's active, just don't do it alone. Build a network of people around you. Even if they're not necessarily employees or team members, build a network of other agencies or services or freelancers that you work with. So when you're offline and you make that decision of I'm not going back on until X time tomorrow, you have somebody to reach out to, say, hey, we need to get this, we need to resolve this. Especially if you can do it across time zones. I think one of the best things that we did, and it was entirely by accident, but so we realized it in retrospect, was having people in almost every single time zone. Because now there's at least somebody that, regardless of what time of day it is at night for my time, we have somebody that it's middle of the day for them, and they can, if necessary, hop on to help address an issue. So build a network.
So if her question was that the underlying thing of there is that particular example is causing her ongoing pain, ruining her happiness, causing her to be miserable. I remember back, I've had jobs. I've had except for iThemes, I've been here 8 years now, but a job every 2 years since I was 16. And so I realized I've been in some really unhealthy jobs and situations where when I started to sense I was getting bitter and angry constantly, and it was ruining my happiness, that was time to say, fix it, change it. And I'm not saying that's her case, but if that particular issue in your business is causing you to stay up and have heartburn and nightmares and that kind of stuff, then my encouragement would be then take that part somehow out of your life. When I quit one of my jobs about 15 years ago, sunshine started raining in, and so if whatever it is, whether it's that particular issue or something else, make a plan to fix that, to remove that particular cancer from your life. And that's my admonition. Like Pippin, you said earlier, you're not as organized as me. I'm not as organized. This is an absolute priority, having been on the bottom of my life with my face against the pavement and being drugged, bleeding, inside, that I determined I would never let that happen. And that same thing goes for any element of poisonous, cancerous type, whether it's a people or a task or whatever, that my mission is to remove that. I have the freedom to do that. Now, it might take me long, but gosh darn it, by the end of that, I'm going to get there, and I'm going to celebrate when I get that particular thing out.
For some reason, I'm thinking about scotches for shippers, but it can also be for freeing yourself in any number of ways. One last question here. I know we're running slightly over time, but it's an important one, and I would like to get to it. And before we do, just want to say, officehours.fm is where you can find the archive of this episode and every other previous 94 episodes we've done. So Christy has a question, and Corey, I'll let you tackle this one first, but she says, any tips on finding a mentor?
Mentor, that's a great question that came up at Pressnomics when I talked about my mentor. It took me a while, but I would just put in your mind the type of person that you want to be, that you strive to be. Put in your mind that person, how you want your life to look like, your business to look like, what success, it all differs for all of us. We've got different little levels and everything, right? But whatever that picture of success looks like, and my particular thought would be, it's an older person, someone's been through more experiences than I have, and I would put that firmly in your mind, and then be intentional about going out into the world, into your community, and just meeting with entrepreneurship groups, meeting people. I found Schmitty, we call him Schmitty, through a friend. And when I started being intentional about getting out into my community and just knowing I needed somebody, I'm so thankful for my relationship with him. That would be my best. I probably need to think through this a lot more, but picturing what success looks like to you. And so when I met Smitty, I was like, that's what I want right there, right there. I'm pretty picky about that too, but everything checked off for him, and I was fortunate enough to find him. But I think if you do that, think through your own success, what it looks like to you, then when that person walks straight into your life, you're going to be like, hey, what can I do to meet on a regular basis, whether that's paying you, financially, investing in yourself in that sense, right? Taking you to lunch if that's part of the, that's okay and kosher and everything. But, being able to recognize who that person as that he or she walks into your life is going to be invaluable. But I think reaching out into your local community, I don't know what that looks like, Chamber of Commerce or stuff. When we started doing things in Oklahoma City here, I started meeting a lot of entrepreneurs. And 3 or 4 of those people told me, I work with Michael Smith over here. We call him Smitty. I'm like, ding, ding, I got to meet Smitty,
Good advice there. Pippin, anything you would add on the mentor front?
I would add, make sure that it's not just finding somebody that aligns with your ideas of business success, but also your personal life success and where you want to be with that, because they're so, I think for anybody who's in this kind of situation knows that they're very closely interwoven. They're not separate at all. I mean, we try to separate business and personal, but one affects the other one so greatly that if you can find that person that has the same ideals, and I don't mean religious beliefs or necessarily personal beliefs, but strive for the same kind of things, that'd be best.
Personal ties into business. You just put a bow on the episode for me, Pippin. Thank you. Well, we are at the end of our time together, but I so very much appreciate you guys for taking the time to just chat about what's I think a very important topic that maybe doesn't get quite talked about enough. So thank you guys, and for you guys that tuned in live and asked questions, I appreciate that as always. So with that, Pippin, where can people find you online to say hello?
The easiest place is Pippin's Plugins on Twitter or pippin'splugins.com or pippinwilliamson.com.
You're consistent. And Corey Miller, how about you?
You guys know where to find me, but can I give a little last encouragement?
Bring it, bring it.
It's the same one I gave for Pressnomics. Is there a call you need to make today? That's more important than remembering where to find me. A call you need to make today, a relationship you need to repair. Something under the iceberg that you need to work on and start working.
And with that, hashtag boom. All right, guys, take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye.